Hello people on the internet, it is I, a nerd named BT. It's a pleasure to be back behind a microphone. It's been a really good long while since I last did a video whose entire purpose was audio, or I guess vocalized content. So anywho, this is going to be a little random, fun little video of fun tier list of current competitive rush duels along with just personal opinion mixed in, which isn't always great. So I have been thinking about doing this for a long while. I just haven't really thought of what I really want to do, but I might as well start with a tier list, and what better time than now, because the meta is very vast and has a lot of options, and a lot more people are topping with different varieties of decks. So of course we have your simple tier 0, tier 1, tier 1.5 into things that can become tier 1, tier 2, rogue, casual, and needs help. Of course most of you guys can predict what I'm going to do. Anywho, let's get into it. First thing up is Aqua. Aqua did get a good sum of support, especially from the Omega Rising pack, in which we got a lot of Sea Serpent, Thunder, Aqua, and Fish support, but that doesn't really mean much for the deck. Other than as a Seahorse, there isn't really much to say about Aqua in general, or playing it in pure, so it would be more on the casual side of play. Sadly. Up next, we do have Attribute Control. This is one of the older type of decks in Rush Duels. So, of course, most people would know about it. Not many people play it really because it's not really that amazing. Of course, we did get a few more cards as of late that do help make the variety of attributes more bearable, but it's not too amazing. So I would probably put it more in the casual sense, right behind Aqua, because Aqua is still pretty good, but it's a lot better than, attribute control. Up next is one of the more recent ones from a previous set before fusions, along with the Aqua support, is Baseball. Baseball is a really fun beater deck, and it's fairly consistent compared to most other decks, especially as a field spell deck. We don't really have that many of them. I believe we have Beast Gear World, and that's about it when it comes to field spells, other than Umi, I would say, which is a much better deck. But I've seen a very few number of people actually top tournaments with this over in the OCG and in casual play. Well, in local play about tournaments that I see, not many people top with it, not many people will really play it, but it's still a pretty good and consistent deck, and I'm willing to say it should be lower on the rogue category because it can still do quite a lot of stuff. Up next is Beast Gear. If you see my previous video, you would understand the power that this deck holds, and you also know that it will do absolutely nothing. Beast Gear has always been one of those decks where it's had a good number of support. It's just the cards that it's supporting is not good. The boss monsters are unsupported. The monsters you can summon aren't as amazing, but it is still a fairly consistent deck, in which I would probably put it in casual play as well, because it's not something too great. The field spell has seen a fair number of play at the very beginning of Rush Duel, but it's completely died out, especially now that Light Machine is the best deck of the format. Up next, I did put Burn Loop. This is more of the idea of Dark Worker being put into competitive decks in order to deal with back row decks, deal an extra bit of damage, though it isn't the best thing. It is one of the top most played burn cards besides something like Cannon Soldier, but it is still a good card and what I would probably put in my first tier 2 table. This is primarily just because it's a very consistent card. You can easily use it with 7 Treasure, which has once 7 Treasure got added, Dark Rooker or Dark Lurker has seen a lot more competitive play, has been a lot more consistent, a lot more people are playing it. It's a really good card. Up next we got Cats. I don't have much to say about it. They have 5 cards. The level 1s are really bad compared to like most other level 1s in the game, because the stat wise their attack is not amazing. The boss monster, less than likely. They have amazing trap cards. They do, they just need a lot more help. Up next is Chair, otherwise known as Chair ODK, which has gotten very terrifying and can last forever, and it sucks to play against. It is so painful to see, but it is still a very consistent deck, because you have your Fairy Chair, you have your Sea Serpent Chair. You do even have Dark Soul Release, which is the level 1 beast, the special summons. You have Amazing Dealer, which is 0 attack. You just have so many options for good 0 attack support, and it's amazing. Though I can't really say how well it does competitively. But I can say that it is better than most casual decks and could possibly make it into low tier rogue. Now that is more or less a personal opinion. I state that on the fact that it is heavily supported, and I can see, and we have seen a lot of people rank fairly highly on Chair because of the consistency of the deck. It just depends on what you're facing against. Up next is the Darks, otherwise known as Fiendish Commander in the past. Their current name is still being determined. I have zero idea what it is. So this is more or less pure warrior in a sense of Fiendish Commander. So playing the deck pure now is not really much of an option. It's not too amazing even in casual play. Your plays are fairly limited, but it is still a pretty good deck, and I would probably put it at top casual. Up next we have Pure Cybers, the purest of kind. This is Maxless Cybers. So Maxless Cybers is basically you're either playing the fusions or you're playing Eidolon, which are really good extenders, really strong cards, and you can pop off so much and it's so amazing. Sadly, people have not seen that in competitive play, and it's just comboing off isn't as good as setting a Mirror Force or having a big Piercer. Plus, the deck takes a little setup to do, but you can typically burn through about 20 to 30 cards by turn 3, which is pretty good. So I would put it above Rogue on Baseball because it is still a decent deck considering how Cybers in general have been playing. Up next is Dinosaur Fusion. So Dinosaur Fusion is a weird deck because most people will be saying you only have one fusion, which is Upstart King Rex's big form. But that's not true. You also have the Metallian cards, in which you do have a vanilla dinosaur, in which you can use along with King Rex. Though it's not really great, though a few dinosaurs have been seen as staples, Dinosaur Fusion in general isn't too amazing. The boss monster is very lackluster. Even if you do get out the Metallian, it doesn't do much for the deck, so it would probably be in lower casual play. Pure Dinosaur, once again, this would probably be with maximum, without maximum, typically without maximum. It's not really something that you really see too often because it's just summoning up a lot of beat sticks in order to play beat down, a sort of aggro deck you say. So once again, I'll probably put it in casual right above Dinosaur Fusion. Dinosaur Fusion, so much fun, but you can't beat OG Dinosaur. Now here we go, the first really painful deck. Pure Dragons. When I say Pure Dragon, I mean Pure Dragon. You only see Dragon monsters in the deck. And of course, you play the staple card, Dragias. It is undoubtedly a tier 1.5. I'm putting a tier 1.5 right now because the deck is somewhat dying out because of how we still have to face against a lot of other decks like Light Machine, we have to face against Spellcasters, and of course every now and then there will be a Maximum Fusion deck coming around. Dragons do have a lot of outs, but it is not the best deck right now, though I would put it in tier 1, but the representation is dying down a little bit, if only a little. Up next is Earth Machine. This is pretty moderate. Not many people play it, but a few people play one or two Earth Machine cards, but playing Earth Machine in general isn't too amazing. It's something more of a few gimmicky cards, but you could play the News Press archetype or News Press series. It won't do much for your deck, and it won't even do much in Rogue. I would probably put that above Aqua on the tier list. Up next, Fairies. Fairies have a few good cards, aka you only play Tiger Roll and along with Yami Ruler or of course Acebreaker. But pure Fairies in general are not something I would really recommend. It is not. They do have a decent deck. It's not as amazing as most others. Probably below, well, above Beast Gear. That seems like a good place for them because though they do have a good number of support cards, they are not too amazing or game breaking. Up next we do have Fusion Dragon, otherwise known as High Dragon. This deck doesn't really see much play. You see a lot of people play the cards, that they would be putting in the monster in their extra deck and their pure dragon deck, but they don't play the fusion materials. It's not really something you see too often, but it's still pure dragon. Though in the concept of playing a fusion focused deck, it would be forced to be bumped over to tier 2. That's mostly because getting out the fusion monster, though not very inconsistent, it's still much better just to be summoning Dragius himself, because that seems to do a lot to the game. Next is Fusion Caster, a fun Ranaru deck, Ryuma deck. So of course Fusion Caster, unlike High Dragon, you actually have a lot of options. And Fusion Monsters, once again, not many people play them. A handful of people are playing the Paladin card. Outside of that, you don't really see too many Fusion Caster decks, maybe once in a blue moon, but it's still Spellcaster nonetheless, so it would probably be put up to tier 1.5 because you are still playing a majority of the Spellcaster cards, including Dark Liberation. So of course it is a pretty good card. I'm sorry if I don't know the new names. I have played through the new Rush game. I don't memorize all the names by heart. Up next is Hand Control. Woo! I love this deck. I've been playing it since the creation of the first hand loop card. So Hand Control has seen ups and downs in the meta as of late, though you will see it in most decks in the form of Candy or Judgment of Light, and in terms of water, you would probably see it in Umi. But playing pure Hand Control nowadays, it's not too great. There are a few good cards, but it is something that would take a lot of effort into playing, and you can easily brick. There's not many win conditions in order to get through a lot of defense, but it does break up your opponent's hand. Depending on the matchup, it is pretty good. Though I would have to put it in mid rogue. That is a good spot for it because it is still played a lot in competitive play, just not as a deck focus. Up next is Light Machine, and you know I'm going to say tier 1, let's go. Light Machine has seen so much representation and has several dozen wins for the last few weeks. The deck is ultra consistent, it has piercing, it has a removal, it has recycling, it can even special summon its boss monsters or tribute summon them for one less tribute. It has so many situational cards and so many outs, and it is very flexible into what it can play with. And there's a lot of different variations, in which with that is Machine Mix, which is still a light machine core, but sometimes you would see a few Earth Machine cards or a few other little stable cards. Of course, with Earth Machine, you can see a lot of OTK potential, and it is devastating to see sometimes. That is most definitely the tier 1 deck of this format that everyone sadly playing, though I love to see Light Machine winning. Up next, we do have Maximum Baseball, otherwise known as Vulcan Baseball. This is pretty much just baseball with Vulcan. Because it is a Fire Warrior, it is very consistent with the deck. And of course, you know what I'm going to say. I'm putting that boy in casual. Unlike baseball, playing Maximum is fairly bricky, and the baseball deck, it doesn't particularly help Maximum. You can use the Maximum as resource fodder, or eventually you'll draw into it. It's not as good, but it is significantly better than most other decks. Next we have Machine Maximum. This is Maximum plus Machines, and I must say it has not done much this format. Typically you see a few Maximum decks here and there, sometimes they mix up Maximums, but in terms of playing Machine Maximum, there isn't much to it. Though you can play the regular Machine, it is still not great to be playing the Maximum. Though it is still Light Machine in a sense, or Machine in the sense, it will be high up on tier 2. Though you won't be doing as well as the other decks because you are playing a downside of being forced to play Maximum, which isn't technically great. Up next is Worm Maximum. What a great fall for a Maximum monster. Exo Worm was seen as one of the best Maximum monsters in the game. Now it is sadly fallen from grace. And of course, we don't see much of it, though it is still a threat when it gets on board. There's just too many cards that can remove it right now, so it's not doing too amazing. So it would probably go above the Hand Control on Rogue, because worms are still pretty good. and along with the maximum, if you can get a solid board, kill quickly, then you have a pretty good game state. Here's a fun one, Maximum Cybers. You might be shocked as me. I've seen many tops in the last few weeks involving Maximum Cybers. It is the biggest surprise I've seen. I've hated on this card for the longest time. I was saying this is probably the most bland maximum because, you know, there isn't too much of a theme to it. It's just a big monster. It is probably the biggest monster in the game currently. So I didn't really think much of it because it didn't have much of a gimmick. But this thing has been tearing through wins. You've seen a handful of people winning with this deck, and it's amazing, especially with the Cybers engine. It is ultra consistent. Though, what would I put it as? I would not really say well, but I would probably put it around maybe low tier 2. I would put it in Rogue, but I feel very confident with the deck because of the new boss monster that's coming out, Atron, and they can do a lot more, especially without monster being an extender and a secondary boss monster. Up next, we now have the main fusion deck of the format, Metallian Ruler. This is a mixture of Metallians and the Rulers, otherwise known as Kimi Ruler or Yami Ruler. This has been the primary way to play Metallian as of late, especially it has a lot more tops than usual than compared to most other Metallian decks. So of course I'm going to have to put this around higher tier 2. The reason that this deck does so much better than most other Metallian variants is because of the Yami Ruler, the Divine Lair. It is a floodgate. It can stop your opponent from summoning monsters in attack position, which means a lot, and that can really stop a lot of people. And then adding on the fact that your entire tribute engine are low-level monsters that can be probably star restarts, and of course you also have Light Fairy as your other fusion material for Yami Ruler. It supports the deck very well. It's a very flexible deck, and it's very powerful if you let them set up. Of course, and then we have Pyramidalian. Pyramidalian is, it's okay. Truthfully, there isn't a big boss monster when you're playing Pyramidalian. It is straight up just playing fusions, which is perfectly fine. It's just your hand can get clogged sometimes. It will depend on your opponent for clearing the field, but it is still a good deck if you would set up and sees a lot of representation. I would put that below Burn Loop because I have seen a good number of Dark Lurker players beating up, or bullying, I would say, fusion players, but they are still really good cards and can be played competitively. Now, Blast from the Past, that is from the most recent format for Light Machine, One Breath Piercing. This is basically Wind Warrior mixed with Dragias and Yami Ruler, along with a random other high-level beater. So this is entirely just an OTK deck of make your Dragias to 4500 attack with piercing, attack twice for game, that's it. It's obviously a very dead deck at this point, but it is still fairly threatening, if you can set it up, of course. A small form of control along with a just quick burning through your deck to get through your OTK pieces. At this point, it is not as good as most other competitive decks because we have much more ways to counteract the deck, especially counteracting Dragias in general, like hard defense line. So it is kind of stuck in a Rogue. It might go down to casual at one point. Up next is Paladin. You might be mistaking Paladin for the Fusion Caster. It is not. It is Warrior Spellcaster. Now, of course, you're going to be thinking, it's a Spellcaster deck, so of course you're going to go up to tier 1.5 or 1. Not particularly, no. It is still... It's not a really great deck because though you do get access to Dark Liberation, your win conditions are not amazing because the Warrior monsters don't have many good win conditions, especially the Warrior Spellcasters, though you do have the Yami Rulers. This is in the sense of playing the Warrior Spellcaster cards. I'd probably put that more in a casual sense on the top. Competitive deck, you can easily beat that. It's very simple. Sidekick, that is, of course, one of the oldest, most consistent combo decks in all of Rush Duels. They have a lot of cards. They have Candy, they have Superstar, they have Romance Pick. It is an amazing deck, but they just depend on luck. Excavating 3 cards to activate Romance Pick, you won't always get your card, but it is still a very consistent deck, especially with Candy and all of your Re-Candy and the new addition, Candy Live. Along with Melody, it is sitting at a very decent, I'll put it at a very high rogue deck. I might be wrong on this, it could be tier 2, but you just don't see too many people on it, and you don't really see that many people winning with the deck. Though there are a few tops here and there, it's not too, not too consistent in winning compared to Light Machine, who can always hit their mark. One of my favorite typings, the Pyro Monsters. This deck has gone a complete 180 since the addition of Fusion Monsters. You can easily burn through almost your entire deck before turn 2 ends. But that doesn't mean that it's a good deck. It is mostly still considered a very casual deck, though you can easily see it get a few wins here and there. And it's fairly threatening because it's easy to set up as a very generic. You can get a lot of different support cards to play it. It's pretty solid. I would probably put that at a little high of a rogue deck. Then of course there's basic Pyros, where just playing everything else. Basic Pyros aren't too great without the fusion, though you do have a lot of good cards. You're still just pretty much playing a lot of beaters. That's what a lot of Pyro decks are, which is probably lower casual play. Royal Rebel, a Fiend deck, very old, very decent, and has seen a good sum of competitive play since the beginning of Fusion, though has recently died down in the most recent sets, because that's just how it is. At the beginning of Fusion format, it was pretty threatening because you had the potential to swarm your board with your extra Fusion monster to foul, and nowadays it is mostly played in a few gimmicky decks with heavy metal, but of course Death Doom is probably the best one considering that can nuke the board, along with their trap card, which acts as a turn to tribute, and of course Live Arena protects you from turn to tribute, so it's a pretty decent deck. I would put it at a rogue considering that it does see a good number of play either through generic staples, but in pure wise it's mediocre at best, but it can still easily OTK your opponent and get over a lot of these annoying trap cards in the format. And we're finally here, Ryuma, the most annoying deck that's been tier 0 since the beginning of time and has only recently died out once Light Machines came into the format. Ryuma is basically Dragon Spellcasters and has been tier 0 since for over a year and a half. It has been the most annoying deck, but it's finally have been dying down. Though it's still fairly represented, it doesn't really see as much play as it used to because it is getting outshined by machines, but it is still tier 1 because it sees so much representation. You still see a lot of people playing it. You'll see a good number of people winning with tournaments, but it is mostly about representation. This deck can't die. Now we're on to a water deck. This is Sea Dragon, which is Sea Serpent based water. So it will be pretty much with Daedalus and Sea Dragons, which will be your main focus of the deck. So Sea Dragon has been one of the more popular variants of the deck, considering that it has support for Grand Extreme, which is your main card for the deck, and it's really, really broken if you read it. So of course that's the primary way to play it, though there are other variants. This is seen as one of the stronger decks, and I would put that at a tier 1.5 right behind it because Daedalus is a really good card along with Sea Serpents. Now we have Space. Space, I just put this in here because it is one of the older decks, and of course we have seen more support for it in the anime in forms of different archetypes, but we just don't have much of a reason to play this card. I would probably put it below Cats. It needs help. Next is of course Pure Spellcaster. Pure Spellcaster is as it seems. It's just Spellcaster. There's not much to it, and it's basically a weaker version of Ryuma because it can't kill as much, but you still have all the good technical cards in the deck, which I would probably put above Dragons but below Sea Dragon. The reason I would put it below Sea Dragon in tier 1.5 is because unlike Ryuma, Spellcaster's Pure can't keep clearing the board of fish or sea servants in a way, because they can easily just recover, they can reswarm, and you can only attack so many times with 7/0 Magician. Up next is Waterfish. Waterfish is a very weird one. A lot of people criticize the deck because the fish aren't that great, especially Megalodon can only change something into attack position. That's not really the case. It gets over a lot of defenders, it deals extra damage so you don't need Piercing Spell. It's a really decent deck, and it's still fish in a sense, so it would probably be above Fusion Caster. Up next is Imaginary Thunder Beetle, and of course you know I'm putting my boy in tier 0. That is the best deck, that is very strong. Thunder Beetle is amazing. It can easily defeat Spellcaster, can easily defeat Sidekick, dragons, you've all seen it. It's a beautiful, amazing deck, especially after the first fusion set and where it got so much support. Up next is Maxless Worm, which is basically a swarming beater deck, and I must say it's mediocre. It's very threatening. You can easily get out 3 big beaters, 3 level 8s plus on the first turn, and you can make them all swing, but that's about it. There isn't much protection to the deck, so it can easily crumble at its feet. But it is still better than most other decks and has seen a fair bit of play, not too many tops. Up next is our final one. This is 0 attack. So this, unlike chairs, this is just general 0 support, general 0 cards, all that. It's something, it's a deck really, but not too many people play it anymore, but it's still a very fun deck to play, and I would still probably put it above Aqua, because I'm sorry Aqua, I love you, but you know, you just can't compete. So that is my tier list for Rush Duels. I hope you all enjoyed this very opinionated video, and if you want me to do another one, just say so. I don't really mind doing another. This was a lot of fun. Peace.